Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hyperconscious Podcast. Alan, what is hyperconscious?
Once you understand why something is the way that it is, now you have the power to change it. Great conversations with great people and great questions are the keys to the kingdom of unlocking your consciousness.
Every single action that you do starts as a thought. When you control the way you think, you will control the way you act, and you will control the way you live. That is hyperconscious. Ladies and gentlemen, the Hyperconscious Podcast is proudly sponsored by our friend and mentor, David Meltzer of the Playbook Podcast. He was kind enough to join us on episode 144 and 135.
Folks, it has become Kevin and I's mission in life to help you realize that the life of your dreams is right on the other side of you becoming the greatest version of yourself. Let us help you do that.
I rarely do these things twice in such a short amount of time, but you guys impress me. I believe in people that provide value and of our service. You two guys are on your way to huge fulfillment, purpose, and profitability, and I look forward to helping you both.
We appreciate that more than you know. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our latest Small Talks episode, where Alan and I sat down and talked all about masterminds. As promised, today we are going to do a Scratching the Surface episode. We are going to take questions and answer them from the Hyperconscious Nation, our private Facebook group.
Speaking of the private Facebook group, if you have not yet done so, if you are into personal development and you are hyperconscious, go to the hyperconsciouspodcast.com, click on join, hashtag hyperconsciousnation. Folks, we just did an episode on masterminds, and that is what this group and this community is about. Kevin and I just realized, recording that episode, how important masterminds have been in making our dreams come true. Imagine having the help of so many allies and learning everything that they've learned in an effort to get closer to your goals. It's going to change your life.
Also,
go ahead.
Alan and I will be speaking alongside Eddie Pinero of Your World Within, Chantel Adams, Terrence McMahon, Phil and Wade of Two Marines, One Mike podcast, and that will be September 7th, Hollywood Beach, Florida, in Margaritaville. It is right on the beach, and we cannot wait to go into this tropical paradise. Some people go on vacation to relax. You can go on vacation and come back a better person, knowing more about finance, health, wealth, mindset, and how to be the best version of yourself.
500 plus seats, going to be epic. Okay, so first and foremost, I want to give a shout out to Elena for submitting this question. This one's a little long, but it's very good. Okay, here we go. Monday already, LOL? That's because we asked this question in the last Facebook Live.
Right.
Okay, so I'm not entirely sure how to phrase it. I'm not entirely sure what it is I'm looking for, but I'm feeling a bit lost. We've all been there. I had a direction I was going, and I was super excited to start working towards a set of goals, but now I'm questioning if that's the right direction to go. I'm questioning if it's even what I want anymore. I'm at a crossroads, and it kind of stands still at the moment. I'm feeling the standstill, especially now since my incision opened last night. She just gave birth to a newborn.
Congratulations.
Right? Especially now since so a couple options for questions. Okay. Number 1, how do you get yourself out of a funk when you physically are incapable? Number 2, how would you go about deciding on a new path or deciding to work on the one you've laid out? And then number 3, maybe I'm questioning my goals because they're not right anymore, but maybe it's just because I cannot do anything to really start working towards them yet. How can I figure out which it might be?
All right, so we'll start with the third question.
Okay.
Right? So can you just rattle it off quickly?
Yep. Maybe I'm questioning my goals because they're not right anymore, but maybe it's just because I cannot do anything to really start working towards them yet. How can I figure out which it might be?
I would get crystal clear on why you think your goals are your goals. Why do you actually want to accomplish those goals? So just as a backstory, one of my clients wanted to be an orthodontist, and I asked him his four M's of motivation, the Tai Lopez. So what motivates you when you're thinking about your future, your goal, your dream life? Is it money/materials, so materials/possessions? Like having nice things, having cars, having all that. Is it mastery/status, becoming the best in the world at something? Is it movement/freedom, not having a boss, being able to go wherever you want? Or is it mating/romance? You get motivated by the opposite sex, by having a family, by having, a beautiful husband or wife. So I asked him that. and his number one was movement/freedom. And I said, okay, now that we're crystal clear on that, do you still think you're ready to be an orthodontist? Because in order to be an orthodontist, you're going to have to not have any movement or freedom for a long time. You're
Right.
going to have to go to 6 years of school, and then you're going to have to do however many years before you can open your own private practice. And on the next call, when we got back on the call and we were talking, he said, actually, I think you're totally right. I don't think that's what I want to do. He said, at one point, I did want to do that, but now I want to get into real estate. So overnight, we literally switched his entire plan.
Dude, it's insane how much you changed his life
Now,
with just asking the right
right.
question.
So for Elena, what
Right.
motivates you to accomplish the goal that you set out to accomplish in the first place?
right.
It's almost like,
Like, what's most important to you?
right. The reason we set the goals we set is because we want the result. But if you don't want the result anymore, then the goal is not the same.
Exactly.
So you have to figure. I would ask yourself that. What one of those 4 M's really motivates you, and will that goal actually get that?
I just did with 2 of my clients last night. I talked about the 4 M's. It's funny. And I'm having them basically do this exercise. Write out the 4 M's and then write out 12 desires under each and then hone it down to 3 under each. And you're going to get absolute clarity. The M that is hardest to write down 12 things under is probably one of 2 things. Either the one that you don't care about as much or the one that you feel least competent in. So yeah.
What
absolute-
was so? Do we want to do all 3 questions?
Next question.
What was
Yeah.
it? Okay.
Okay, so there was 3 questions there. So the first one, how do you get yourself out of a funk when you physically are incapable?
So that's always an interesting one because I think when you get moving, your mind catches up to your body and you start to like think better. But it's if you can't move, then I would actually consider this kind of a win. Like use this downtime is time to master something else, to really grow in something else. I think it all starts with a third question. The reason you don't have clarity on the reason the other 2 questions are even questions is because you're not clear on the goal yet.
Right,
You're
which
not
is why you started with a third one.
right. So I truly think the third answer is the answer to all 3.
Isabella Picard talks a lot about how she was able to master spirituality when she was physically incapable.
Yeah.
So there are other things you can work on. So if you can't work on your body, work on your mind or your emotions or your spirituality.
There's always something
Yeah.
you can be working on.
Of course. Absolutely. Okay. The other question here is, how would you go about deciding on a new path or deciding to work on the one you've laid out?
So I think there's, again, how to work on the one you've laid out, determine if it's the one you really want.
Right.
If it's not the one you really want and you come up with that, start thinking to yourself, if I could wake up a year in the future and I was looking back on my previous year, what would be the best year ever? What was I doing every single day? Who was I hanging out with? What was I doing for work? How was I feeling fulfilled? Was I giving back? I know for me, and this is something that I've found, giving back is what a lot of people want to do. They just don't know what way.
Yeah,
a lot of
what
people,
the vehicle is.
Right. A lot of people want to be the person that they needed.
Yeah.
A lot of people do.
Most of the podcast guests we have, we end up finding their deepest why in their deepest pain.
Yeah.
It's
So,
a common
like
denominator.
every one of my clients now wants to do some sort of either podcast or like blog to talk about what they're going through.
Yeah.
And I think most people want to do that. So I would think of what is your dream life. I remember when I said having a podcast is my dream job.
Yeah.
It's my dream career. And then that's what I went after. I'm so happy. Now you're going to learn things and you're going to find out things about it that you didn't know.
Yeah.
But if you love it, you'll be willing to stick with it.
Absolutely.
Why power?
Absolutely. Fire. All right, Eddie Pinero
EP.
asked some questions. Eddie P. Can't wait for that event. September 7th.
Yes.
Your World Within
yes,
Live.
Margaritaville. In Margaritaville.
Okay. So, hey, Alan, can't wait for the episode. Few questions for you. Number 1, what are some tips/tricks that you use to keep yourself from falling back into old habits? Fire. Number 2, how do you balance your desire for more with appreciation of how far you've already come? Do you seek out a middle ground between the two?
The
Some
second
would
question,
say-
grateful dissatisfaction.
Right, exactly.
Grateful dissatisfaction. We were talking about that earlier. You have to understand. So let's do this. We've talked about the drive to 5.
Oh, yeah.
Right? If you're a low on the drive to 5 versus being high on the drive to 5. If you're low on the drive to 5, take as many possible wins out of every scenario that you can.
Yep.
I wouldn't say don't look at the losses, but I would say look at them
Much
differently
less.
than you look at the wins.
Right.
The fact that you got out there and did it and accomplished it. So those who are low on the drive to 5, that means they lack confidence. They usually lack action. right? The fact that you're taking action is unbelievably important, and you have to give yourself credit there. So don't focus too much on the losses because that will make you not take action again. If you're high on the drive to 5, I don't think you should look at your wins that much at all.
Right.
Because you probably assumed you were going to win.
Right.
Okay? So really, really dial in your losses and figure out where you can make those shifts.
So we were talking earlier, and after the Confident Women's Consortium, Kevin, it did much better than he thought he would do.
Naturally.
I did much worse than I thought I would do.
Naturally.
So I tend to be on the higher end of drive to 5. Kevin tends to be on the lower end. And every rep is a report card. I need to look at the Fs more than the As. Kevin needs to look at the A's more than the F's. If you're on the low end of drive to 5, put in the reps, look at the A's more than the F's. If you're on the high end like me, look at the F's more than the A's. And no matter what, take action because that's the only way
It's the only way.
you can drive to 5.
That's why I always say, I say this to clients, I say this to regular listeners who reach out to me. The result almost doesn't matter if you're low on the drive to 5. It's the action that matters. The fact that you took the action, that means the result is something you never would have gotten. So don't focus on it too much.
Right.
You just need to keep taking the action.
And you kept your promise to yourself,
Yes.
which builds confidence,
Yes.
even if the result wasn't fire.
Love it.
Okay, so we just answered the second question first again.
Yeah.
So the first
Gotta
question,
keep
Eddie
doing
P said, what are some tips/tricks that you use to keep yourself from falling back into old habits? I can use booze on that, but I want you to go first.
I would say, number one, why do you consider it a bad habit if you do?
Right.
And why did you stop doing it in the first place?
Let's define good and bad habit. I define good habit as it is bringing you closer to your goals and dreams, and it's good for yourself and others. A bad habit is basically the opposite. If it is not bringing you closer to your goals and dreams, and it is not good for yourself and others.
I would agree. I would agree 100%.
Right.
So I think, why did you stop doing it in the first place? Like, if you... let me try to think of an example.
What's an example? What's a bad habit you slip back into?
Sleeping in, kind of.
Okay,
I
right.
slept in today. I slept terribly last night, but my problem is when I sleep in, I don't feel like motivated to work. I gotta sneeze. Nope. Yep.
Oh, there we go.
So, for instance, I couldn't fall asleep last night. I fell asleep at like 2:30 in the morning, and Taryn's alarm went off at 6, and I was like, "There's no way I'm gonna be able to function."
Right.
So I slept until 8,
Plus
and that
we
just
had a long day planned.
yeah, and that just threw my whole day off. Now, the problem with bad habits is they roll. You do one day of it, and it's comfortable. Usually, bad habits are comfortable.
Some would say momentum.
Some would say momentum. So I would say, why did you stop doing it in the first place?
Right.
Because it's a bad habit for a reason. Now, I would try to play it out a little bit. If I continue this habit for a month, where will I be? Will I be further from my goals? Will I be in the same place, or will I be closer to my goals? You'll almost never be the same place. You'll either be further or closer.
Absolutely.
Good habits versus bad habits.
And how often you measure that is important. Imagine being on an inner tube in the beach, and you're just floating there, and you're not really aware of anything. You're kind of like daydreaming.
And then you get eaten by a shark.
Right. That's also possible. But then you end up a mile away from your towels, and it's only been 10 minutes. How often do you check in with whether or not you're on track or off track? So one thing I'll use is booze for me. So what are some tips and tricks that you use to keep yourself from falling back into old habits? Persons, places, things, and ideas. What are the persons, places, things, and ideas that I used to be around that would... For example, for me, weddings is a struggle. Being around certain people in certain environments makes it far harder for me not to drink alcohol. So I think staying out of environments that don't serve you is important. That said, if you are going to go into that environment, make sure you prime yourself effectively of like, I know it's going to be difficult not to drink, but I will be glad I didn't the next day. Here's the thing about habits, and then we'll go to the next question because we're only got 13 minutes left. Good habits are hard to create and easy to destroy. Why? Because they get rewarded slower. Okay? Bad habits are easy to create and hard to destroy. Why? Because they get rewarded quicker. Now, trigger, behavior, reward. What are the persons, places, and things that are triggering the behavior that you want to change? And what are you getting rewarded for? For example, for me with alcohol, let's say I've been to a couple weddings. One of them I didn't drink at, and I was so excited the next day because when I woke up in the morning, I went to the gym, and I had my most productive day ever, and I felt really good, not only self-esteem-wise because I stayed true to my goals, but also I felt good physically. So had I drank, I would have gotten the quote-unquote reward right away rather than waiting until the next morning when I'm the only one not hungover and I'm happy about it. So remember, Bad habits get rewarded right away. Be careful. There was one wedding where I didn't stay in the pressure of like networking and being around people. That's the thing about booze. When you're uncomfortable in an environment, it makes you numb the discomfort rather than sitting in it.
Right.
So I had one drink, one led to two, two led to four. Then we had an after party. Then we had an after party. And I was up. The next day, I was literally puking outside my car. So upset with myself. So yeah, I had a blast that night, but I paid for it on the back end.
Yeah.
And so that's good habits versus bad habits. What are the persons, places, things, and ideas that are holding me back from keeping my good habits?
And will I regret this too? That's a good question. to
Will
ask
I
yourself.
regret this?
Will I regret this tomorrow?
That's one of the most important questions
Yeah.
you can ever ask yourself. Absolutely. Okay. So Alex Hinkle, since he's been on the show, we'll say his first and
What's
last
up,
name.
Alex?
Alex Hinkle. Shout out to you for hosting that mastermind
Yes.
Last
speaking
week?
of mastermind.
or the week before.
2
I'm not
weeks
sure.
ago.
Okay. When stress/pressure gets high due to growing pains in entrepreneurship and life, how do you balance being warm with people you care about most?
Oh my goodness. Interesting.
Fire
I think
question.
it depends on. So let's be real, Alex. The people that love you didn't sign up for this journey. You did. So you have to like communicate with them. You have to be so good at communication that you're able to take a step back and kind of eliminate that stress in that moment. Right? We always say find R&R. Like when I'm with my significant other, I cannot bring that stress. I have to be the best version of me. She didn't sign up for this.
Right.
She didn't sign up for the speeches. She didn't sign up for the travel. She
She
signed
didn't
up.
sign up for the pressure.
She didn't sign up for any of that. She signed up to be with me. And in my loving version, in my supportive version, my vulnerable version, right? So you have to understand that, number one, becoming the best version of you needs to happen anyway. So you're going to have to master that part of it too, right? But maybe it's like communicating that. It's definitely communicating that part of it. I'm in an unresourceful state. Can we revisit this later? Or letting somebody know, like I'm feeling very overwhelmed. I'm feeling very stressed out right now. I might not seem like myself. I think you have to communicate it, and then you really have to be conscious of it.
Yeah.
Like maybe what they're saying on a normal day would not mean anything bad to you.
Earlier today, you had a moment where you were overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And then you sassed me.
Yeah.
And then you immediately were like, yeah, I'm totally just overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And you communicated effectively.
That's practice, though.
Right, I know.
I haven't always been like that.
I know.
I just know now that, like, we're all human and we all make mistakes, and the person that you might be like, really losing it with, they might not have any idea why. They might think it's their fault.
I know.
And I think communication is probably the most important when it comes to that.
Absolutely.
And then you have to check yourself. You have to try to think to yourself, like, I am the person here who is on this journey. I have to become the emotional master. I have to be able to master my emotions.
Absolutely.
Because this is going to happen again.
Right.
Right? It's just going to be higher stakes.
The other thing, so Kevin went deep on that. I think to answer your question, Alex, another thing that helps me tremendously. So I have the 3 words that I live by. Number 1 is exceptional. Number 2 is enthusiastic. And number 3 is caring. When I'm alone, I'm not going to lie, I am pretty hardcore with myself. But I make sure that I prime myself for enthusiasm and caring prior to going into public. I'm not always perfect at this by any means, but like, for example, I'll listen to a more fun, loving song when I know I'm going to go hang out with Jenny. Or I guess make sure you prime yourself for the environment. Just like before the speech, you were listening to music.
Yeah.
Okay? You wanted to be in an open, loving, resourceful
Oh,
state.
no, I wasn't listening to loving music.
What were you listening to?
I was listening to, oh my God.
Emotional music.
No, for this, it's kind of emotional. It was Jeezy.
Let's talk about it. So you're priming yourself for the speech. Why?
Well, because I was listening to something on linguistic programming, and they were saying that if you listen to, I've been listening to the same music, same couple songs in the gym over and over and over and over again.
Right.
Because I want when that music comes on for me to know what time it is.
Right.
Basically. So I've just been trying to...
Game time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I prime myself for environment. So to answer your question, Alex, before you step into an environment with someone that you need to be warmer with, take a deep breath. There's 3 things. 1, physiology, posture. Number 2, breath. And then number 3 is focus. Put on a song or focus on something you're grateful for. So, little Shiloh. She's cute.
Yes.
Little Jackson is cute. That's Jenny's dog. Think of something that makes you happy so that you can get into a resourceful place before you step into the room. For me, that's huge.
I think maybe that's something I'm just better at than I realized. I don't ever.
I always prime before every environment.
I usually don't. But so when I'm done with the gym, I'm done with the gym. When I enter the gym, it's gym time.
You're better at switching than me.
Well,
We've
maybe,
talked
yeah,
about this.
yeah.
People come up to me at the gym when I'm
Yeah.
in war mode, and I have a really hard time
I have
shutting
people
off.
like interrupt me while I'm hitting the bag, and it's just like, oh, whatever.
For me, it's very hard to shift.
Well,
And I think probably for Alex as well.
I think that's good that you answered that because you can add more value there than I could.
But the communication piece, there will be times when you prime yourself and it still goes astray.
Yeah.
Then listen to Kevin, not me. Okay, so Monique. Monique, thank you. How to handle, you'll like this one. How to handle a negative person when you can't just cut ties and not be around them.
Oh man, I've gotten that question quite often.
So many people struggle with that.
Yeah, it's understandable. It's understandable. One thing I like to say is you cannot influence others while being influenced. So if you're hanging out with this person and their negativity is rubbing off on you, it's going to be very hard for you to influence them in a positive way. So again, I think you have to triple down on being the person you are and understand that there's a reason behind their negativity. Maybe it's it's most likely something you can't even see. I think it's probably maybe a bad experience or maybe a bad home life or maybe missed opportunity or maybe regret, something manifesting itself. You're eating the microphone.
Yeah, I'm
What's happening
contemplating.
here?
I think that's the first time I've ever heard you say that.
I've said that before. I don't know if I've said it on the podcast.
I may or may not have been listening.
You don't often. You don't always.
Okay, so you cannot influence someone when you're being influenced?
I think that maybe not cannot, but you're struggling.
You're not consciously influencing. So, like, if you're under the influence of alcohol, are you influencing people? Yes, but maybe not proactively.
I wasn't going there.
But you talked about, like, we did an episode on influence. I guess, can you go deeper on that concept? Because that's the first time I really...
If you and I are hanging out in a room and I feel like you're a negative influence on me, I am not going to try to influence you positively because I'm going to be taking your influence.
Okay.
And I'm not going to be giving any back. One of us is going to leave with more of the other person, most likely.
Okay.
And if it's negative, if you're leaving with somebody's negative energy and their negative influence, you're not going to put in the effort to be a positive influence on them.
Okay.
And you might not be your best self because you're feeling that projection of negativity.
Okay, so for someone like Monique who's going into an environment, it's funny, this is a great next question because Alex said, how do you be more warm?
Right.
And then it's like, okay, well, how do you also defend against toxicity? So let's say Monique is going into an environment where someone is influencing her energy in a negative way. What does she do about that?
What I would do, what I've always done is I literally try to get rid of the human aspect of it and say, like, this person is this way because of this. Like, maybe they have a bad home life.
So empathy?
What this negativity is a manifestation of circumstances, most likely. They're most likely not a bad person.
Oh, right.
They're
right.
most likely not trying to negatively influence you.
Yeah.
You and I talk about things all the time where it's like we'll meet somebody and then we'll start like masterminding about like what do we think that person's all about? Like, oh, I wonder what their life was like. Like this, that, the other thing. There's a reason I'm the way I am. There's a reason you're the way you are.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody has a past. I think that instead of looking at the behavior, we have to look at the past. We have to look at their current situations. We have to look at their mindset. We have to look at where they are in their life. You know, and I think empathy is huge because somebody has to take charge of this positivity.
Okay, so let's say you come from that empathetic place. Monique is there with that person.
Mm-hmm.
Now what does she do? She put herself in her shoes or his shoes, understands them better. Now what?
Well, it depends. It depends if are you trying to be a positive influence or are you just trying to get through the time that you have to be together?
Probably the second one.
Right.
But how do you do both from your perspective?
You lead by example. You lead by example. I think what'll happen is if you get around somebody negative, it's really easy. When people are shit talking, it's easy to shit talk.
I know, man.
You know, so you have
When people are gossiping.
You
it's
have
easy
to get
gossip.
away from that and lead by example. And if they want to come on that train, they will. But you can't let their darkness dull your light, because then you'll be closer to them.
How do you know when that's happening?
I think you do. I think you just subconsciously know, like, this shit's rubbing off on me a little bit.
Right.
I wouldn't normally behave this way, and now I am.
Right.
You know I do.
It's almost like when you leave the place, you feel like oh, I wasn't really me there.
Right.
I wasn't the best me there.
Yeah, I
I
regret
used
it.
to feel that all the time
Yeah.
after a party or
Yeah.
something.
And I think it's a
you
balance.
kind of regret it. Yeah, it's a little.
It's a very tough thing, and it's hard like moment to moment. But you have to. What would best version Monique do today?
right.
Right? She would just lead by example.
Lori said, just respectfully say, and then we'll get to the
No,
next
we're good,
question. Just respectfully say, we were at an event with Lori Harder, and she said that a lot of women struggle with gossip.
Yeah.
In A Tribe Called Bliss, her book, empowering women and masterminding and all of that. I'm bringing up Lori a lot these days. But she said in that room that just respectfully say, I'm sorry, but I don't like to participate in gossip. And people will actually respect that very much.
I think it depends on the negativity too. If it's somebody who's like, "Oh, the world is terrible, my life's
Right.
terrible," then that's a fine line. I think it does depend on the specifics, but I would say start with empathy and realize like you have to lead by example, even if they're not following. Everybody's watching what you do. The same way that the person with the negativity doesn't necessarily know that they're influencing you.
Yeah, they don't know that they're being negative.
Right.
Even.
Right, so
maybe
you
they're
have
not,
to-
Maybe they're not hyper-conscious.
Right. Well, some would say hyperconscious is the way.
I mean, some would say. Okay. Fire. Next.
Next.
So, Bianca, thank you for reaching out.
Shout out to B.
Shout out to B. Okay, what is your surefire method of cultivating confidence and staying consistent in that confidence? Which is perfect because we're doing a 5-minute clinic on confidence
Yes,
next.
we are. Is that the last question?
That's the last one.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. All right, we have like a minute and 30 here. A little bit more.
Okay, so I'm going to rephrase. Reread. What is your surefire method of cultivating confidence and staying consistent in that confidence?
I wish I had a surefire way to stay confident, but I think it's understanding that you are going to fail, and it does not mean that's who you are. You're not a failure. That just means what you try didn't work, right? So I would say continue growing, evolving, and becoming the best version of yourself. Keep getting out of your comfort zone because you're going to prove to yourself the things I'm afraid of aren't going to kill me. Those are two surefire ways for me to build confidence. Like I talked about it at the speech, like cultivating confidence isn't something that you wake up one day and you just do one thing and you become confident.
I know.
Why are you good, like Bianca, why are you so good at squatting?
I
Because
know.
you squat all the time. It's
Right.
something that you fundamentally know in and out. You know how to teach other people how to do it.
She taught me how to squat.
Right.
Better form.
So
You
you-
tried, and I didn't listen to you
Yeah,
for some
no-
reason,
nobody
even though I should.
But so that's what it is. It's every day.
Right.
Like when you're at the checkout line and you could either be quiet or start a conversation with the checkout person, start a conversation with the checkout person.
Yeah, every time you shell up versus step up.
You just keep stepping up because what you do every day becomes a habit and it becomes normal. If you're shelling up, that becomes normal. If you're getting outside of your comfort zone and becoming more confident, that becomes normal too.
I was at a photo shoot with Bianca. The timer's about to go off, but huge shout out to her for stepping outside her comfort zone, coming to that photo shoot with me. Shout out to Brian as well for taking those shots. They came out incredible. I got to watch Bianca go from completely uncomfortable, not knowing how to pose, asking me basically from across the room, like, what do I do in front of the camera, to crushing it. It was one of the coolest experiences I've ever seen. I went from someone going completely unconfident to totally owning it and running the show. It was just awesome. So huge shout out to you. If you're on Kevin's end of Drive to 5, you need to stack the wins and really find the courage to take action because most likely it's going to go better than you thought it was going to go. B said that. It went better
Yeah.
than she thought.
Yeah.
If you're on my end, you already have confidence by default. Work on humility.
Yeah, I think honestly, it's continuously getting out of your comfort zone. You're becoming the most evolved, capable human being, and that's where confidence is, or lack of confidence is usually in lack of certainty. When you don't know why something's going to go a certain way, you might freak out over it. Well, when you experience more things, you realize certainty and lack thereof doesn't necessarily mean bad.
Right. You said everyone sucks at first.
Everybody sucks at first.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a matter of realizing that it's okay to suck. It's okay not to succeed every single time.
Right.
You know, and also make sure you own your uniqueness. Own the shit about you that makes you you.
Your next speech, you're going to be more confident.
Right. Because I'm going to be more competent.
Right. Because you now know.
Right.
Whereas when you never spoke, you had all the uncertainty.
Like Bianca will be more confident
in her next shoot.
her next shoot.
Right.
So how many things haven't you done the first step of? Therefore, you can't feel confident at the second level. You know, like if you haven't done your first podcast, you don't know what confidence podcasting is. But when you do your fifth, you're going to be 5 times more confident than you would in the first.
Right.
Just a matter of starting. Like Alan said, you got to start.
All about the reps. Every rep is a report card.
Some would say. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed this. I think we're going to have to make this a common thing that we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we will talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for listening to another episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast.
Going hyperconscious will absolutely change your life, because if you understand why something is the way it is, now you have the power to change it. If you going hyperconscious with us has changed your life in any way, please share this episode with one of your friends, because the more people that go hyperconscious, the better this world's going to be for everybody.
And if you would kindly leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, that would help us make more people hyperconscious, and we would be greatly appreciative.
Thank you.
Bye.